Hi, my name is Lauren.
And I'm Callie.
And this is the Book Common Room podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Book Common Room podcast. We are so excited to be here. As always, we need to start off talking about the books that we've been reading lately.
Oh, yes. Do you want to start? I'll get mine.
Yes, except mine is not here with me. It is
That's
upstairs.
okay.
But
mine's at my feet.
yes. Before we get into the book of this month, I have been reading Hunger Games because I've never read it before.
Which is so crazy.
It was my first time, and I loved it. So I've been reading Hunger Games, and then I just started Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone.
Wow.
Yes, I'm not very far, but I'm really liking it. It is giving Into the Wild vibes and Mosquito Coast and Blue Highways, which are like 3 different books, but all packed into one with interesting characters. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Historical fiction.
Yes,
that's all she writes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and apparently she was a lawyer, and now she writes all these books, and I've heard very good things about her. So this is my first Kristen Hanna book.
The Nightingale. That's about it.
I liked it. A lot of people like that book.
The Nightingale. Really sad.
The Women, which is about the women in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and then The Great Alone. I feel like those were the 3 that I hear people talk about a lot.
I can see that.
So, anyways, it seems like it's going to be sad though.
Yeah. Are you liking it?
I am. It's more of I know this isn't going to end well.
Yeah.
At the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm we got a lot to get through. So I'm curious how she's going to navigate that and keep me invested. Yeah. When I already am because I already feel like the main character is a little optimistic, but then pessimistic.
Yeah.
So we'll see. She's a 13-year-old girl.
Oh.
So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But I'm excited, and I will keep you all posted.
Love it.
But anyways, what are you reading?
I'm reading 2 books right now. I'm reading, this is the one I couldn't remember the name of. I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline. I don't know.
Oh, this is the French person?
French or German. I should have Googled this beforehand. Hold on. Okay, she was born in Belgium, but then they moved to France. So it's French. It's like a dystopian type thing. It went out of print for a long time. This was published in the 90s and then just went out of print and then came back into print a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. So, they're rare. And then I'm also reading Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm just on a Taylor Jenkins Reid hype, man. I love her writing style. I love the drama. But I feel like these 2 balance each other out. There's a more classic-y, deep one, and then just kind of something fun.
Yes! I love that so
depending on my mood, I bounce back and forth.
Yeah, I might have to have an in-between book because going from Hunger Games to this book, and this book is going to be about man and the wild, but also nature of man itself. I might need a little.
Yeah, well, because I finished the new Hunger Games book, and that, was sad. So I was I need something just kind of fun.
Something light.
Something fun, something that's still fulfilling in certain ways.
I love that. So here we are. Anyways, Hunger Games. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to talk about this. I was kind of dreading reading Hunger Games.
Yeah, do you want to explain why? Why were you dreading to read this book?
Well, because I had seen the movies so many times and I loved the movies, and I was I also was this is a book I should have read in middle school or high school. And so I feel I don't really want to read this. I'd rather jump to The Poppy War or something. But
it's kind of like The Giver. I wish I read The Giver when I was younger.
Yeah.
Because when I read it a couple years ago, I was I see why this is important, why people like it, but I feel too old for the story.
Did you read 1984 before you had read it too? Mm-hmm. I think that's why too. I feel The Giver is a child's read while you work up to 1984.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was kind of dreading it. I was oh man, I'm gonna kind of have to sludge my way through this. That was not the case.
No.
But as this is our non-spoiler, we're kind of gonna dive into the genre, the importance of the book, and the
This is another
author.
funny one where we're doing a non-spoiler, even though I think everyone knows what happens.
Everybody
we'll
in the
stay
doghouse.
away from major spoilers, but
Yeah, I also think
so if you haven't read it, this is still watchable.
there were things though for me reading the book as the first time that were new, like
Yeah.
that I
There's
was
stuff
like,
that's not
I'm
in the
so
movie.
glad nobody spoiled this for me because I didn't actually remember how these characters died, how these characters were involved, and like the backgrounds of some characters. So I will say like there are some surprises if you haven't read Hunger Games, but
Yeah.
you've only known the movies. But I do think, especially I think this week was like the anniversary of the Hunger Game books or something like
Was
that.
it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
That's
then
cool.
and everyone was like getting that the new book that came out that was about
Hey, Mitch.
the character Haymitch. And so and like it was like the anniversary of like Hunger Games. I don't know how long, like for how many years.
I thought the first one was 2008.
Yeah, something like that. So I don't know. Anyways, so I feel like Hunger Games has been like a hot topic right now lately because of that book and also like
Yeah, 2008.
for when this book was written. Anyways,
So it's almost been 20 years.
that's crazy.
Because I remember when the third book came out. I don't remember the first two coming out. I remember reading them in middle school. And then the third book came out, and my mom hates the third
Yeah.
book.
Oh, the third book? Okay.
She hates the third book. Well, it's just sad.
Yeah.
And my mom doesn't like sad books.
They all were sad to me.
Mom, if you're listening to this, I am airing out your opinion. But she just didn't like how graphic she was, which I appreciated how graphic she was.
I was going to say that's one of my favorite
I
things
like
about
that
her
she
writing.
didn't shy away from it. Because she's got a message, which we'll talk about. I did a lot of research, and it's very exciting.
Yeah. My thoughts on that are going to be in our spoiler episode. But my mom bought it when I was like in middle school.
Yeah.
And I think I have read the first book before, but I didn't remember much about it.
Yeah.
But my mom bought it because she was going through this kick of like all these like books that were getting awards and stuff. And so she got Hunger Games, and then she like came back and she was like, I just found out what that book is about. Don't read it.
I could see your mom not wanting you to
Because
read
we
it.
were like in middle school, and my mom was like, "It's kids killing kids." Like, it's like, and I mean, like the only other book I know that's like that was like Lord of the Flies, and that's horrible.
Yeah.
But like anyway, so that was like my exposure to Hunger Games as a kid.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like it's a debate you have as a parent where the message is important that you do want your young children to start to think about it. And the Hunger Games, what I like about it is accessible for young readers or people who are getting into reading. But it still is. It's like, but do I want to introduce my kids to something violent? So it's kind of personal. I liked that I read it young because then I feel like I was able to go into like 1984 and stuff like that when I was in like high school and I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And then like I just liked that I read it younger. But I mean, everybody's different. So
I like hindsight. I kind of wish I did, but at the same time, I don't think I was ready for it because like you had already been like reading those kinds of books. I was still in like Harry Potter world, which Harry Potter is quite a traumatic read by itself. But like it's not like Hunger Games and like war and oppression and like it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
So
well, and I had read her other book series in elementary school.
Oh.
Gregor the Overlander.
Okay.
I haven't met anybody else that's read this book, but it's the first book series I remember reading in elementary school and like getting to the end of it and recognizing like, wow, that was a good book. Like I cried and I was like, well, okay. It's about this kid who lives in the city and he jumps down a hole, like a sewer hole, and there's a city underneath there with like giant rats and giant bats.
Whoa.
And it's a war book. It's another like anti-war book that she wrote, but for elementary school kids. So there is like a battle that's going on, but it's like appropriate for the age.
Interesting.
And I do remember getting to the end and being like, whoa, that was so good.
Yeah.
And then in middle school, I read The Hunger Games. So Suzanne Collins has just followed me throughout my life.
That's kind of cool.
But I didn't recognize...
I think a lot of people are like that.
Yeah, I didn't recognize that it was her, though, until a lot later. I didn't put the two together.
Authors? That's interesting. Yeah, I just didn't have that kind of exposure when I was younger, but I also just feel like as like a parent, each of your kids are going to be different. Some of your kids can like read Les Mis when they're younger, and some kids
I wouldn't have been able to read Les Mis when I was younger. No.
But I do know someone that read it when they were like 10.
Which is so impressive.
Yeah.
I never would have been able to understand what's going on.
Oh my gosh. Like the Victor Hugo's concepts? No way. But anyways.
Yeah.
Back to Hunger Games. I am very excited to talk about it because I do think, for me, like getting into like the dystopian genre, like I feel like Hunger Games is like such a good place to start because it has like very similar themes that you'll see in those genres later on.
Yeah, I would say 1984 and Hunger Games have been like the two biggest influences for a lot of modern dystopian that's being written.
Yeah. George Orwell. That definitely has like a huge, like his Animal Farm. I think Animal Farm was like another one of those. You read it as a kid to prepare you for 1984.
Well, because isn't it... See, I haven't read Animal Farm. Isn't it like the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing, but on a farm.
Yeah.
And it's really sad.
Well, 1984 sad.
So, yeah. And so I think it was like you have to age into 1984. And so I feel like Hunger Games... I think it is a great book series, and I am like so glad I didn't go my whole life not reading it.
I know. This is a book series that I think everybody should read. Because I also think a big reason a lot of people didn't read it as it was coming out was I think the movies ruined it a little bit. Like when they were advertising the movies, I feel like they were leaning into the love triangle, because that was the trend of the time.
Oh yeah,
was you had Twilight,
and I think all the skits and stuff were making fun of it. Yeah.
And that's what people focus on was the love triangle, and like, oh, it's YA, so it's not important. So why would you read it? But then you go into it, and it's like, I mean, yeah, the love triangle's there, but it's not the main part of the book at all.
And I also thought it was interesting, and like maybe this is like digressing too much before we get into like wanting to talk about like Suzanne Collins and her influence. But I did talk to someone recently about the Hunger Game book series, and because you had mentioned like when you read it as a younger kid, some of the concepts did go over your head, and then you reread it and you're like, oh wait, no, Katniss is really cool.
Yeah.
And I had talked to someone recently about the Hunger Games and how that's how I kind of saw things in the movie. I thought Katniss was great, but at the same time, I do remember there being a lot of like pressure around like their relationships and less about like the whole like story,
the world that's happening.
The world that she's wanting to like explain and like for you to really understand the messaging. And this person that I was talking to was like, like you read Hunger Games and you like totally like don't get the Peeta, Gale, Katniss deal that they show in the movie at all.
Yeah. I think the movies are great. I like the movies.
Me too.
I think they do a good job as an adaptation because there are just some things you can't do in a movie that she did in the book. So I think they did really well for what they could, but you still should read them.
I will say I'm now dreading to watch the movies because I love Peeta so much.
Yeah.
Peeta's so different in the books.
Josh Hutcherson, I still think, did an okay enough job. And I think I love Jennifer Lawrence's Katniss. I think she's a really, really good Katniss.
Yeah. Katniss is very, like, her whole thing is, like, she doesn't really show expression.
Yeah. And I think Jennifer Lawrence did a really good job. And, oh no, what's his name? Who did Gale?
The Hemsworth.
It's not Chris.
Brother.
Liam Hemsworth.
Sorry.
Liam. I just don't like Gale. He needed to be in the book for the message he's making, but Gale bugs me.
Gale bothered me, but he's better in the books than the movie.
Oh, 100%.
I was like, dang, he understands Peeta and is like kind of understood to step away.
Yeah. Like, but I think all the actors did a good job, but yeah, Peeta's definitely different. Peeta's probably the biggest.
I love him so much in the book, and then I think of the movie, and I was like, oh, I didn't feel the same. Like, the way I feel in the book is not how I feel in his depiction of the movie, but I do feel like Jennifer Lawrence did a good Katniss.
Yeah.
But I also need to rewatch them, because I haven't seen them since reading the books.
We're going to rewatch them.
So we're
planning it.
The marathon's coming down.
I'm going to make you do it. Anyways. But... Well, let's get into who Suzanne Collins is.
Yes, I'm going to have Callie take this because I know nothing.
Well, because normally we do like the basic information, and Lauren usually spearheads this.
Yes.
And it's like, basic information about the author. And I don't know, I've already talked about this, but like knowing who the author is, I don't think is like super, super important before reading a book. Because you're reading a book to read the words on the page.
Yeah.
And like knowing the author's cool. That's a tangent. Anyways, but... I want to meet Suzanne Collins in real life so bad. I want to meet her in real life. I want to shake her hand. I want to sit down and have dinner with her.
I think you're not alone because, like, I feel like this is a very hot topic right now too, and and she's like, what the heck? Like, how long has it been? And she just whipped out like 2 books that everyone's obsessed with. Yeah. So,
anyway, so brief synopsis of just who Suzanne Collins is, and then I got very excited and did a little bit of a deep dive in some things that I'm actually really excited to nerd about. I don't know if anyone else will think it's cool, but I think it's really cool. Anyway, so she was born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1962. So she's in her 60s right now.
What? No way. Yeah. That's crazy. She old lady.
And, right? I did my math right, didn't I?
I don't know. I cannot confirm.
She's older. Anyway.
60's not actually that old. But it's just surprising to me.
When I picked, for some reason, I thought she was in like her 40s. When I pictured Suzanne Collins, I pictured a woman in her 40s.
That's how I imagined it too.
Anyways, so she grew up in a family that was kind of surrounded by war, which I didn't know. So her father and her grandfather and her uncles, basically all the men served in like wars in different capacities. So her father was a historian and a doctor of political science, and he would teach at different war colleges. But during the Vietnam War, he got deployed to Vietnam, and he taught at the Air Command and Staff College out there. So she's basically grew up with a father who just knew war, taught about war, and just knew a lot about history. So she says that her dad growing up would like always share history, but almost say it in like a fun story type of way. So he'd be talking about this war, but he'd make it fun for kids.
Interesting.
So when she went into writing the Hunger Games, it wasn't weird for her to have a really like graphic war story, but for kids, because that's how she grew up. And that's why it was kind of easier for her to write that book.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's just kind of always been a thing.
I wonder what her dad thought about the Hunger Games.
I don't know. I didn't ever see anything about that.
Yeah.
But that'd be interesting to learn. But she then went to school and got a bachelor's in theater.
What?
And a master's in dramatic writing. Not what I would have thought at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when she first started her career, she wrote for children's shows, mostly on Nickelodeon. Isn't that so polar opposite?
What?
Right?
Oh my goodness. That's so cool.
So then one day she just wanted to take her writing skills and her love for history, and she wrote Gregor the Overland series. And she was kind of like obsessed with Alice in Wonderland. So she took like Alice in Wonderland, war, and this whole thing and wrote Gregor the Overland. I'm not going to really get into that series because it's kind of a tangent. But I do think, even if you're an adult, I want to reread them. Oh. Because I've actually heard as adults, it's good still. So, but if you have little kids, that's actually a good series to read.
That's cool. I like it.
And then when she was finishing, just to continue on the timeline, as she was finishing writing the 5th Gregor the Overland series, she was already thinking about the next book series she wanted to read. So one day she was flipping through TV channels, and she was going between reality TV shows and the news on the war in Iraq. And so then as she's thinking about what she wants to write about, she starts to get these ideas about the Capitol and like, or just people who on reality TV shows who have a lot of money and it's all performative. But then on the opposite side, you have people who are living in war and poverty, and like, how do we live in a society where how does that work? Where you've got polar opposites and you could watch both of them on the same television. So she's kind of thinking about that. So then she's like, okay, I'm going to write a book about this. But I think Suzanne Collins could write a textbook on how to write a story. Everybody writes stories different ways. I mean, what was it? Stephanie
like a
Meyer
master class.
had like a dream about it or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And J.K. Rowling wrote the ending on like a napkin or whatever. Suzanne Collins went, I think, the way I would go about it. She took a theory. It was like, this is the theory I want to write about. Okay, I need a place. So then she came with a place. Okay, I need people to put in the place. And then she came with the characters. And she said she would put like sticky notes, like Post-its up. And like from everything she's come up with, that's how she wrote her story.
Oh.
I was like, that is very interesting. She could do a masterclass on it.
And also, I feel like that's teachable.
Yeah. That's why I think she could like write a textbook.
Yeah, because like I feel like Stephanie Meyers and J.K. Rowling give really good advice, but I feel like as far as making writing teachable and chewable, I think I would want a Suzanne Collins masterclass.
Me too. And I also think, like, this is nothing to go against Harry Potter, because I do think Harry Potter is going to last. But I think if you want to write a story that's going to last and people are going to find it important versus just, like, entertaining, like Twilight, this is a really good way to approach it.
Yeah.
Because I think Hunger Games is going to be a classic. Like, people it's going to become like a 1984, I think. Like, people are going to read it and study it in schools.
Interesting.
Yes.
It's good. It's a good book series.
This is the section that I think is really cool. Okay. So, have you ever heard of the just war theory? So, in a nutshell, the just war theory is basically if a group of people or a country want to go to war, what is the just way to go about it, or how can we get the most amount of justice within a war? So usually within the just war theory, so you have to have a good leader, a good reason, and you have to like actually be able to think that you could win. You can't just be like, oh, we have a good leader and we have a good reason,
but no chance.
But we're gonna lose.
Yeah.
That's not a good reason. That's not, according to the just war theory, that's not a reason why you should go into war. And then while you're in war, you have to keep all these things there. But then you have to like make sure that you're only targeting other soldiers and not civilians. So, like in the Capitol, this is a spoiler, I won't say that. But there are certain points that the Capitol did to end the Dark Days war that happened before the Hunger Games, where they targeted civilians to end a war. So I mean, that is a way to do it, but according to the just war theory, that's not a good way to do it. Okay. You just target military places, not civilian.
But like in real war today, like most of the weird, like not weird, but like horrible things tend to happen because they're targeting hospitals or they're targeting like camps where it's like majority are women and children.
Yeah. I mean, a good example is at the end of World War II when we bombed Japan. We bombed a bunch of civilians. Now, you could argue that ended the war, so maybe you could argue it needed to happen, but you could also argue that that wasn't right, that wasn't okay. Like, because you killed a bunch of civilians, and it's still affecting civilians to this day.
According to the just war theory.
According to the just war theory. And then it also prohibits actions such as genocide, torture, and rape. So, like, like Japan did all of those things. Like when they went into war,
a lot of people
they went to Korea and and China, and they did all of those things. So according to the just war theory, even though technically Japan did win those battles and those wars, it shouldn't have happened, according to the theory. And then after the war, you should have treatment of prison, like a fair treatment of war criminals and prisoners. You can't just like use them as slaves just because they were the enemy. And then you have to be able to rebuild after the war. You can't have the war destroy all these things but then not be able to rebuild after. You have to have the capacity to do that. Anyway, so within basically the just war theory to me is how can we have a perfect war? In reality, which I think what the Hunger Games is trying to approach is, if we're trying to have a just war, is it actually possible? Or do we have to sacrifice some things to win? Like, you could argue in the Hunger Games that there was a low probability of them winning.
I was about to say.
But they still did it because they...
Either way, people are oppressed.
Either way, people are oppressed. They also didn't know in the end if they were going to be able to rebuild. So is it within the just war theory? So I think what Suzanne Collins is trying to do is introduce this theory, and then is letting you as the reader decide whether or not you agree with it, you disagree with it. And one thing I love that she does is she introduces characters who have different, like, view the world differently.
Yeah.
So...
like Plutarch versus
Coin, or Gale versus Peeta.
Oh, yeah.
So as she's creating her characters, the reason she had Gale and Peeta wasn't necessarily for the love triangle, but because they represent different viewpoints of the world. Gale is the one that's like, yeah, let's bomb children.
They would do the same thing to us. They've already been doing this to kids.
They've already doing it to us. They've already doing it to kids. We should just do it back. We should, like, get as many weapons as we can and just attack, kill as many people as we can. We're just going to fight this war. Like, honestly, he seems more of the revolutionary type than Katniss was.
Yep.
Versus Peeta, on the
100%.
other hand, was like, yeah, we do need, like, this war should happen, but you have to remember humanity.
Yeah.
Like, we need to put the humanity back in it all. So I think when Katniss throughout the series is trying to pick between Peeta and Gale, it's not necessarily a romance. Because, I mean, if you read it, she's not really thinking about romance. It's more of, do I agree with Gale's point of view of the war or Peeta's point of view of the war?
Yeah, I also think it's like a survival thing for her. So she's like, I need Gale.
Yeah, because
Right
she does
now.
need him in certain places. She needs that, like, okay, yes, I do have to go out. I do have to go fight. And then she needs Peeta to come in and, like, soften it. Which is why I love Katniss, because she is somewhere in the middle of both.
Yep.
So that's kind of, like, the theory. So as you're going into the book, I think it actually enhanced the story. After I learned that, I was like, wow.
Like, I think
It makes so much
I think
sense.
so many people could have, like, deep conversations about how they would view it. Because I'm sure, like, I know a lot of people that would be like Gale. Because they're just like, we need to win. And this is the same tactics they were using. But then, like, you could make a lot of arguments in the spoiler episode. Like,
Yeah.
if that's what we did, you could bring up so many other points. So, like, I feel like it makes a rich debate.
Yeah.
Even though it's, like, a YA story.
Yeah.
Like a YA series.
And the other cool thing about Susan Collins is she is very anti-war, but she still introduces the idea.
Yeah.
She's not going to, like, just because she has her own opinions, she's still going to introduce the other side.
Yeah.
So as the reader, you can go in and decide for yourself, which I like. I like that aspect of it. I like to call myself a little hippie.
I think I'm a hippie.
All love, no war.
I know. If only.
If only. Anyways, that's not the point. But, so, she has this really cool thing of, like, the just war theory. So then it's like, okay, now how am I going to write about this? Where is this going to be? So she came up with the arena first. So in an interview, which I'll link the interview, most of this information came from this, and then I kind of went off and found other references for things. But she said that she took influences from the myth of, is it Theseus? Is that how you say it?
Theseus.
Theseus, yes. Okay, so the myth of Theseus, in a nutshell, is this young prince from Athens. He had 7 girls and 7 boys, put them in a labyrinth to fight the Minotaur. And, like, she says in one version of the myth, it was excessively cruel punishment resulted from the Athenians,
I don't know.
opposing Crete, in war, in a war. So sometimes the labyrinth is a maze, and sometimes it's an arena. So she kind of just took that loose idea and then put it together with Spartacus, who was a person who was who's a slave, forced to become a gladiator. And then he basically breaks out, starts a rebellion. And it basically has the same arc as the Hunger Games.
Interesting.
So she took the two, put it together. And then let's see here. I'm going to go back to that. So then basically now she has the setting. She has the arena, and she said she had, like, with the reality TV, she knew she wanted to have some sort of capital and what she wanted to look like.
Entertainment aspect.
Yeah, so you needed people who were oppressed, and you needed people who were not. But you needed to have someone who was the most oppressed to be the main character. So Katniss had to be from 12. She couldn't be from, like, 8. She had to be from the lowest of lows to have, like, the most impactful story, which I liked.
I also feel like there are things only Katniss could do because of that. Like her hunting skills.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a spoiler. I think that's
Nah.
but, like,
It's in, like, the first 2 pages.
but, like, she's only able to do that because 12 is so, like, overlooked that she, like, learned those survival skills.
Yeah, because 11, is speculated to symbolize, like, supposed to represent African American, and it's supposed to be a very black community who is, like, basically under slavery because they're on the farms.
Yeah.
So she could have done something like that, but since they're so watched over and there's so many peacekeepers, that we wouldn't have had a character like Katniss who could go out and hunt. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I kind of liked what she had with Katniss.
Yeah.
She really loves Katniss.
Oh.
And she has a lot of care for her, which I love. So she knew that she needed a character who could... She chose the weapon first, basically.
Oh, the bow.
The bow. She wanted her main character to fight with a bow because you can make it just on your own. It's very accessible. It's not like a gun where you have to, like, get it somewhere. You could just make a bow. And it's something that could be taught and someone could be really, really good at versus a gun you point and shoot.
Yeah. I mean, there's, like, distance, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when she was coming up with the name, so Katniss the plant has, like, an arrowhead leaf. It's got white flowers with arrowhead leaves. So she's like, that fits.
Yes.
But it's a root plant. It's very resilient and very stubborn, which also fits Katniss. And the Latin name has the same roots as Sagittarius, the archer.
Oh.
So it's just kind of all of these things that fit in together. It's also called the swamp potato or the duck potato.
Well, and they talk about that in the book, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And then she actually originally she was going to have this in first person. And then she said in the interview so she says, I thought the book would be, she wanted the book to be in third person. She said, I thought the book would be in third person like the Underland Chronicles. Then I sat down to work and the first page poured out in first person, like she was saying, step aside, this is my story to tell. So I let her.
That's so cute. Okay.
And then
that's cool.
We don't need to go into this, but the rest of Katniss's family basically just kind of like fell into place because of who Katniss is. Like she just basically created the family so Katniss could become who she needed Katniss to be.
Yeah.
We already talked about this. Gale and Peeta were more created, so you had both sides of the war debate. And then President Snow, he's in the movies quite a bit. That's one thing I like the movies do, is they add him in. In the books, she meets him at the end of the first one. Let's see here, the beginning of the second one. And then you don't see him again until like the end of the third one. He's only in there a couple times. I feel like President Snow more represents the oppression than being an actual character.
Yeah, he just seems like the face.
The face of it, yeah.
Whereas,
kind of like 1984 with Big Brother.
There you go.
That's kind of how I thought of it. But she said she picked snow because of its coldness and purity. So he represents just pure evil. It also said his first name, Coriolanus, is a nod to the titular character in Shakespeare's play who was based on material from Plutarch's life. He was known for his anti-populist sentiments, and Snow is definitely not a man of the people.
Yeah. The weird thing is, we can talk about this in our spoiler episode. But, like, what's weird is
we're just, like, teasing you guys.
Snow says stuff that's, like, partially true. So it's, like, it's hard.
It is hard.
Because,
especially
like,
at the end of the third one.
Yeah. Because, like, he'll say things that he's able to point out things in other people because he has it.
Yeah.
And he's not a good guy.
Well, I think that's what makes Snow so evil is he thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
He fully believes that what he's doing is good for Panem and is good for the people. But in reality, he's not for the people.
No.
And he's just an evil guy.
Yeah. But it's just interesting because, like, she does a good job talking. I love how she depicts Snow in the books.
It is still really good.
Yeah.
And then this is just kind of a fun fact, but apparently she's really bad at coming up with titles. Which I relate to wholeheartedly. I can never come up with a good title for anything.
Especially my essays. I'm like,
right?
That could have been better. Yeah.
But originally, the 3 books were supposed to be The Tribute of District 12 was the first one. The Ripple Effect was the second one. And then the third one she said was so bad, she doesn't even want to, like, mention it.
Oh, that's so funny.
But her editor was like, okay. we need something that rolls off the tongue better.
Yep.
So she had an editor who came up with The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And they're all like symbolic, which is good. So,
I mean, she had to approve the titles, obviously, but they're better than The Tribute of District 12.
Yes. I think The Hunger Games is way better.
It is better. Yes, I agree. And then this is also I just thought was interesting. So when she sold the rights for the film, she wanted to make sure she found someone who wouldn't change the ending. So she didn't want someone, because the ending is hard, which we'll go into, but she didn't want someone to like buy the rights for the movie and then just be like, oh, this is too harsh or this is too sad. We need to soften it for Hollywood. Her main thing is, no, I had this all for a reason, and it has to be harsh and it has to be kind of graphic because there is a point.
Well, I like... Oh, that's a spoiler.
Yep. The wounds would leave lasting scars. It's not an easy ending, but it's an intentional one. Like, she's very intentional about how she ended things.
Yeah, everyone that you lose in this book series is for a purpose.
Yeah. Because war does not discriminate.
Nope. It is the great equalizer.
Yep.
Horribly. Yeah. But anyways, I would say, and we can talk about, man, like, everything is like, spoiler.
We just keep being like...
tease you about this, but I do think... that was, like, a good thing that she had said when she sold the rights. I felt like they adapted it pretty dang well. Yeah. But I will say the end still doesn't...
It still is not
doesn't hit the way the book does. Yeah. Which is why I recommend you reading the books. Because they're just so good. They're so fast-paced. I read them in, like, a week. Like, does not take long. Other people, if you just sat all day and read them, you could read them in, like, 3 days. Like, it does not take long. But I do think... when you get to the end, it's so worth it. Like, you feel empty, but you're supposed to. And it's, honestly, like, it's not, I don't know, like, you don't regret it, which is what's weird. No. You're just
because when war is over, people aren't happy. Like, even the side that won. You don't talk to people who have been war and is like, yeah, I'm really happy that happened.
I think most people are celebrating because it's over.
Yeah, like, it's like there's an end. It's over. But then, like, I mean, you've got... Suzanne Collins does a great job about, like, talking about PTSD. Like, Katniss has really bad PTSD. And she just, like, shuts down. And I think that was awesome that she did that. Because...
that's real.
Like, again, like... within the just war theory, like, okay, yeah, war needs to happen because people were oppressed, so they did have a cause. Did they have a good leader? We'll talk about that. And could they have won? They thought they could. I mean, if you think about it, there were more people within the districts than the capital, so they did think that there were enough of them to fight against the capital to win. But that doesn't mean that everybody came out and was like, I am happy.
No, it's so true. And, like, I do think, like, in real war, like, you have, like, the people who lost and, like, all the debts that they have and, like, how that's viewed in history versus, like, you think of, like, V-Day, you know, and, like, how it was just, I don't know, it was an end to something.
Yeah.
But I feel like in Hunger Games, it shows more of the lasting effects. Yeah. Less of, like, the immediate, like, relief of it being over.
Well, because, I mean, another example just from history, like the Civil War.
Yeah.
Well, like the American Civil War. Part of it was slavery. Yeah. Slavery is bad. We needed to get rid of slavery. I'm really happy that that's not a thing anymore.
Yes.
But, like, there was still so many losses. Like, there was oppression that needed to end, but at what cost? And the cost has to be great enough. I do think ending slavery is great enough, but you have to ask that question.
It's so, yeah. Hunger Games is great because it brings up these kinds of conversations. Like, despite it being a YA series in, like, writing, like, it has very mature topics that I feel like can grow with you as you get older.
Oh, yeah.
Which is cool.
I think everybody should read this in different phases of life. So read it in middle school because I think it's a good way to stretch young readers, but it's still accessible. And, yeah, like, some of the heavy stuff will go over your head, like it did mine. But then when I reread it as an adult, I was like, I get it now. I'm glad I read it in both phases. So then I was able to stretch myself as a reader, but now I'm like, I get the themes, I get what she's talking about.
I do think it's important that kids read these kinds of books. Like, like, I know that for me, things would have gone over my head, so it would have been more for, like, an entertainment, and then, like, oh, this is interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And then
which is still fine, because maybe that's what you needed as a kid, and that's great.
But I do think kids being exposed to, like, these kinds of things are important, because, like, I don't know, it's important to know about the tragedy of war.
Yeah.
And also, like, all the themes in Hunger Games, I feel like kids can surprise you. Because, like, it is about kids.
Yeah, it is about kids.
And, like, you know,
She's 16.
yeah, and you know, like, historically, like, and, like, one of the other tributes was, like, 12, but, like, looked like they were 10.
Yeah.
And, like, in history, like, you have boys going off to fight in wars who lie about their age.
Just because they're kids doesn't mean they're also escaped from the war.
Yeah, like, 16-year-olds were going and saying they were 18, and then they were seeing these horrible things.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's interesting. And I also, like, there's lots of nuances with war, but I feel like Hunger Games is such a great place to start. I think,
she opens up the conversation.
Yeah.
Which I do love. She doesn't really go super, super deep.
Yeah.
But opens it up so then you think about it, and then you yourself can go and do your research. And then you can get deep.
I love it. I also feel like it prepares you for, like, those other books like 1984 or...
Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, just, like, those kinds of books. I feel like the Hunger Games kind of provides you that stepping stone to being able to chew those kinds of topics and being able to, like, think about how do you feel about that?
I also think the other reason I love dystopian as a genre is it's about humanity and how people react, who humans are, and how you should treat other people, and, like, can we sacrifice people for a cause type of a thing, which I think Hunger Games also opens up.
Yeah.
And, like, 1984, but 1984 it's not as, it doesn't do the same thing that Hunger Games does, which I like.
Yeah.
So Hunger Games is all about war, right?
Yes.
But I also think she talks a lot about propaganda. And that is a huge part of her books, is propaganda, not just in the books, the capital side, but also within the rebel side itself. I won't say how or why, but Peeta has this line where he has to ask real or not real constantly. He's always asking if something's real or fake. And I think another message that Susan Collins is trying to get us to do is if we go online or read the news, we're always asking real or not real. And it doesn't matter what side you're on. Like, you should always be checking up and asking this. Like, Katniss herself, another thing I love that she did was Katniss, going into the Hunger Games in the first book, recognizes she's a pawn for the Capitol. Which is obvious. She's going to the games. They're all pawns. But as the book goes on and as the rebellion goes on, she starts to just become a pawn for the rebellion. A face. They're asking her to act and be fake. And Gale is really good at it. He's on that side where he's like, yes, I will make the propaganda. I will control the narrative so more districts will be on our side, even though I'm acting and it is fake. I can do it, but Katniss just can't. She is so human, and I think that's why it worked with her, is she couldn't act, so any, like, propaganda the rebellion made worked with Katniss because she wasn't acting or lying. But you still have to ask, is it real or not real? So I think that's just kind of another huge thing, is, like, to really make sure you know what's going on. Another reason I love Katniss as a main character, like, because sometimes she's pretty unreliable. She herself doesn't really know what's going on.
She has to think through it, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But she flip-flops a lot.
She does. So you as the reader have to, even with Katniss, have to check up and be like, okay, what do I think is happening based off of her voice, but then everything else people are telling her.
Because she just only knows a survival instinct. She, like, her instincts are just, what is my best chance of survival?
Yeah.
And then her logic follows that. When sometimes it's not that logical what she does. Because you're like, well, looking at what you've seen so far, this decision probably isn't the best. But she just does things because she just, all her life, has been trying to survive since she was 11.
Yeah, she takes care, since she was 11, she had to take care of her mom and her sister. Kept them alive. And then I think that's why she did so well within the Hunger Games. And then outside of it, I would argue, like, she cares about the rebellion and she cares about what's going on, but not the same way Gale did. And not even really the same way Peeta did either.
No, and you knew Gale could be that person from the beginning of the book. Because of, like, he already could point out what's wrong, whereas Katniss is like, this is how it is, this is what we need to do to survive.
Yeah. And I liked that. I liked how Katniss's main character was always kept as just very, very human. And always reminded the reader to remember that this isn't necessarily a book about... It is a book about war, but it's a book about humans that are in a war.
Yeah. And she wasn't always saving the day. Like, a lot of people were having to, like, clean up her messes or, like, things like that.
Especially in the third book. We'll go into it, but other people had to literally do it for her.
And everyone was just, like, trying to, like, keep her alive.
Yeah, and so I liked how that aspect of her just being a pawn on the capital side and the rebellion side, and how there's propaganda everywhere. I liked that aspect of it, especially today. I think that's a very like today thing.
Oh, for sure. Especially with like social media and like technology. Things are so incredibly polarized. Like imagine like Hunger Games with this kind of technology. Like it would just be such a mess, because like you would always be wondering what's real and what's not real. And the hard thing is you don't have someone there to tell you.
No, well, because like the For You page on TikTok or Instagram, the algorithm literally pushes videos that it thinks you'll like. So all you're getting is the information that this algorithm thinks that you like.
Yeah.
So then that's your reality. But then as soon as you step away from it, it's like, wait, is this reality? And so you kind of have to just always make sure. Like, there's this joke where it's like, I read an article, but in reality, people just watched a TikTok.
Yeah.
I think for little things, like little drama, like within Hollywood, can be kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, real, like, big, serious, real-world stuff, I think that is dangerous.
Yeah.
I think you need to go out and, like, look into what people are saying.
Yeah, and it's like so easy to read something and then get a visceral response and be like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's good that you can know when something's right or wrong. Yeah. But you need to look into it, because people change how titles are. They'll like name something and then you look into it and you're like, well, that's not actually what happened. And so it's hard because in the book series, it's kind of nice because there's someone there that can actually be a truth person, like that can speak the truth to you, whereas we kind of have to, our job is we have to figure that out.
Yeah. I also think too, if you look into it and you see that the video is right, then I think it's just also a stronger argument.
Yeah.
Or just, I just think it's important to always ask yourself, real or not real, whatever it is. And this, I'm not like pointing to one side of the political spectrum either.
Yeah.
Like it's everywhere.
Propaganda's on both sides.
Propaganda's on both sides, because that's how people in power are able to craft a narrative and to control it. Like, that's how you control a group of people, is you control a narrative. That's kind of just like an introduction to the Hunger Games and the story, and just kind of like main themes to look out for. And also why I think it's just an important story to read nowadays, and like just to like watch out for.
Yeah.
And why I think everybody should read it at least once. Because I know, like I said at the beginning, my mom didn't like the third book, but I still think she still read it and, like, was introduced to, like, the ideas. So then if we're talking about it, we don't have to necessarily talk about, like, plot things, but, like, oh, this aspect of it I thought was important, so we should then talk about this. And it leads into other important conversations.
For sure. And I also think, like, it's okay to not like something because it's sad.
Yeah.
But I think it was,
I've read tons of stuff like that.
Yeah. But I think for your mom, it was, like, that was just hard to read.
She's also a mom.
And I feel like it'd be hard to read, but not saying, like, that everything that happens wasn't, like, important to the story.
Yeah. Like so the Grave of the Fireflies, the Studio Ghibli movie. Yes. I'm never ever watching that movie again. I'm glad I watched it once, but never again.
That's how I feel about Schindler's List.
It's just so sad. Like, I can't do it.
Yeah. Grave of the Fireflies, I watched like Schindler's List. I watched that once and I don't need to see it again.
Nope.
Like, I don't know. Like, that kind of stuff is important to be a witness of. Yeah. But also, like, it's horrible.
Yeah. Like, not something that I day-to-day like to enjoy.
No, thank you.
No, thanks.
No, thank you. But anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be talking a lot more about things we can actually talk about in the next episode because we can give more spoilers.
We'll apply the stuff we've talked about this episode.
Hopefully we can catch all the things that we were like, I can't say that. I can't say this.
I've seen some podcasts who have taken the Hunger Games like chapter by chapter.
Oh,
and
really?
I was like, if we had the time, that would have been really cool.
Yeah, honestly.
They'll do like chapter 1 through 5 and they'll talk about what's happening there, and I think it would be kind of fun.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. I feel like there's a couple books that would be fun to do that with.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have the time.
No, there's 3 books. Well, they've been doing it the newest one, the one about Haymitch.
Oh,
like they're like reading along. It
really
looks like
cool.
It's actually a lot of fun. If I can find one, maybe I'll
cool.
put it in the description because they're cool.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys. We will catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.